Hello everyone. So this is going to be the Bronte guide. Now, she's not really that great for speedrunning. Don't expect ever to get a really fast time on her in solo. She could be really good in seasonal speedrunning with a team, and she's really good in extreme speedrunning with a team, but even then she's still going to get beat out by more popular and better compositions, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's slow in those aspects. Her damage isn't necessarily bad anymore now that she's got all these buffs coming. I did say in previously in one of my tier lists that I made in the past, I don't really like tier lists, but I did mention that if they ever buff her, she would become insane. It's kind of happened, but she still needs a little bit of love. I primarily run her skill build. You can see in the clip beforehand, she can hit pretty hard. There was a couple of upgrades lacking from that run to really make it shine, but it's a good idea and a basis of how it could operate. To start with, let's go over relics. So I run Mercy, obviously, Giant Strength, Crit Defender, and Skill Module. This is a very common setup. Because she doesn't have skills that can hit multiple times, and she only really has one damaging skill, there's no need for stuff like Special Charge Module. Instead, we opt for physical, more flat cooldown reduction stuff within the run itself to help that. But for the most part, this is what I run. Going into the relic drop rates and priorities, you want lots of skill power related stuff, so you're going to want to find your extreme power chips, and you're going to want to find your power boxes. Again, we build in crit chance, so we're going to want critical damage from our critical power magazine and our critical box, and any crit damage stuff we can get on our weapon is also a bonus. She is going to do most of her damage while shock is on the target, and I mean most of her damage is going to happen while shock is active. For this reason, it's very crucial that you find status effect scope, and I would even prioritize buying this over damage, because the moment your shock drops off, your damage also drops off and basically drops off a cliff, and you'll see that in the protein clip at the start. Once shock wore off, the fight got much slower. Weak spot is a great 25% damage multiplier. This will be applied by your weapons and by your balls quite often, so we just grab this on sight. Shield module. This is kind of a thing I only really ever opt to buy for Bronte, and that's because of how fast you can spam detonate. It makes stacking your crit defender a lot safer for her at the start, as you'll spawn in with your shield from your skill tree, and then you can just spam detonate on cooldown, and you'll have 100% uptime on the shield, and you never have to worry about accidentally dropping your Mercy. Reactive charge module, like I said at the start. Special charge module isn't great, so we prefer these type of cooldown relics, which we can get in the run, so we don't opt to usually start with these. And then moving over to status effect target. This is a status-based character. Status effect target's going to be a great addition. If we find reactors that we can proc reliably on top of this, even better. And then abundance to cap out our crit rate with our crit defender. If you don't see this, then just opt to pick up any other crit relics you see, except from dodge greaves, because dodge greaves obviously gets taken off when you take damage, and we're going to be hurting ourselves with Giant's Neck. Other notable relics I haven't put up there but are good to look out for anyway are going to be defense suit of retaliation and exo inner suit. Bronte gets a lot of skill power, so this will end up hitting quite hard, and because it's triggered every 10 seconds, this means your first cycle of detonate and your third cycle of detonate, you'll be able to proc this, and it does a pretty hefty chunk when you combo. Moving over to skills, I opt to start with explosion damage. I was toying around, and there's really not much difference between starting with shock target on your detonate and explosion damage on your detonate. They do relatively the same DPS values if you opt to start with either one. I personally chose to start with explosion damage just because if you ever get bots in your runs, and when I say bots, I mean like the tile set types, so this being Medusa, Commanders, Slayers, because they're immune to shock, it becomes much slower, and I was sick of resetting trying to find a lineup that didn't have one, so I just opted to take this and then took whatever lineup shoe up, and it just happened that it was unfortunately 3 bot planets, which is why the timer looks like it does in the first clip. In an ideal world, you would start shock target, then you would look for explosion, and you would also want to pick up detonate radius. Now, the order in which you want to find and prioritize these upgrades is finicky, and it kind of depends on what you've already got. So if you already start with explosion damage, then you'll want to find shock target, and then your next highest priority would end up being wherever it's gone, the double plasma, as this will give you pretty much triple your damage by that point. And then if you've opted to start with shock target and you haven't managed to find explosion damage, then you'll want to find the explosion radius buff over it. Ideally, you'll have all these anyway, so you'll pick up these three when you see them, and you would also want to pick up your Eye Plasma giving you skill power and immunity on status effect when thrown. You'll have this up all the time as you're throwing balls left, right, and center. Twice the balls, increase shock duration. Then you would want to find the pull-in effect, as this is going to give you shock target now as well. And cooldown. These are the only four really that matter. The biggest limiting factor in this build will be your detonate cooldown and your Eye Plasma cooldown. Anytime they're not up, you're not going to have burst damage. On top of that, you'll want to find the Bionic Pulse upgrade that gives you 100% damage to shocked targets, because this also applies to your allies if you're a multiplayer, and also because it's 100% damage to shocked targets, it's a crazy value. And cooldown for it. Like, the double duration doesn't really matter because you're prioritizing cooldown in your relics when you find them anyway, so you'll have 100% uptime on this either way. On the teleport upgrades, there's actually a couple of good ones in here. So you'll want to find the plasma firing on teleport. This is huge, as it gets all the benefits of your detonates and all the benefits of your Eye of the Plasma, except from the double plasma. It does not fire 2 when you dash. The other one that's good is this 50% skill power when teleporting. You'll have 100% uptime on this, as you'll be wanting to teleport to fire out plasmas. And the other good ones are the cooldown and the dash charges. This allows you to just do it more often and get more combos going. If you get all of that, then your combo will end up looking something like this. You'll pre-stack before the boss by spamming detonate at the gate. You'll enter the room, you'll Bionic Pulse into the fight, and then you'll want to dash forward plasma, and you should have four of them stacked if you have the plasma on your dash upgrade. Or if you have the balls times 2 balls, you should end up having 6 of them stacked, and then you can just detonate, and it's a massive nuke. You will fire your gun in this build pretty much always anyway, and the DPS values are mediocre. It's there as a filler mainly, or whatever stat stick you have on the gun. Weapon wise though, primarily I choose to assault handguns because they're just the highest DPS weapon for the lightweight breakers, so if nothing's dropping, then I at least have this. But you can technically use anything here that has good stats rolled onto it, but if you want to min-max with status effect target, then you just pick up burning scatter pistols and use it for burn. You don't really want an Injurious because you don't want to be applying shock outside of your burst window. You want to be applying shock with your detonate instead, and your decoy. And you do not want to be picking up cannon weapons like the Broker's Cannon or the Gatling Gun or the Cryo Beam Cannon, because if you pick those up, then you cannot use Critical Power Magazine, and on a character like Bronte, not being able to utilize Critical Power Magazine is a detriment to you, more so than any other character. She has really high ups, so her DPS is really good when you get it going, but on the flip side, her damage is also extremely low if you do not get it going, so be prepared for some disappointing results, but also huge dopamine hits when you play this character. Toy Workers, I opt to run high V2, because until I find shield module, it pretty much keeps me safe at all times, and then once I have shield module, I'll have permanent uptime on the 15% attack power. If I wanted to min-max this, I would roll off this weapon power thing over here in favor for more skill power, cooldown, or shock target. I hope this has been insightful and useful. I plan on doing more Bronte stuff in the future, so I'm actually going to be doing some seasonal stuff eventually, and release kind of my build that I do for seasonal for her, as in seasonal her damage gets even crazier. as well as some speedrun stuff for Campanella Normal, because her speedrun stuff for Campanella Normal is a little hard to get going. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if there's anything you wish to see in the future.